Well, hello, Socials fans. If you were away or you just wanted a review, here's what we did the other day. Now, we reviewed the war in all of its facets, from the home front to what was going on, to new weapons, to what an ace was. So I'm going to show you the picture that I drew here. You can find it in class, you can find it on this video, and you'll also probably find it in the Louvre on display because it's so good. It's being picked up by the French government as a piece of history. You too can buy a replica of it for $50,000 with my signature on it. So first of all, the other day we talked about the different weapons in war, and we talked about how blimps, dirigibles, were invented and how they weren't really an effective weapon per se, but they would float over top of the trench system and do reconnaissance, find out where are the trenches, where's the best place to attack. The second thing we looked at was the flamethrower. A pretty awesome weapon, a pretty terrible weapon, but somewhat ineffective. The Germans called it the Flammenwerfer. It could be used to, disintegrate bodies who are hiding in shell holes. It was terrifying to see it coming, but also ineffective. It took 2 to 3 men to help run it, and if you shot the gas tank in the back, you could kill them all, and snipers were quite effective at doing so. One of the other things you'll notice here is the trench system. It wasn't straight. So if somebody from Canada or Britain ran across no man's land through the craters around the Flammenwerfer, somehow got through this barbed wire, which you don't want to be on the business end of, and ended up in the trench, well, the trench is designed so that if you shoot down it, you won't kill everybody down here. If this was flat, you'd do so. So there's actually little areas like this, cross-cut sections, so you can only shoot down about, say 20, 30 feet. Another weapon that was invented was the tank. Now this was after the Battle of the Somme, which the Germans called Der Blutbad. About 600,000 people in the Battle of the Somme were killed in Der Blutbad. On the Allied side, and on the other side, about 600,000 were killed or injured as well. So people realized, well, the tactic of attrition warfare, of just throwing men up from their side across to be killed by machine gun fire, was ineffective. So they invented the tank as an armored vehicle to help save human lives. Way over here, we also talked about World War I and the evolution of pilots and flying. Planes started out pretty much as a reconnaissance vehicle. They flew over, took a look at the enemy trenches, went, okay, what's back there? What do they look like? Where do we need to attack? And then eventually they evolve into the pilots trying to have dogfights or kill each other. At first they drop bricks on each other, then they get handguns, then machine guns, and by the end of the war they're also an effective killing machine. An ace was the name for a pilot who killed 5 or more planes, who downed 5 or more planes. One of our aces in Canada was Billy Bishop, and he had 72 confirmed kills. Now the issue with saying that he had 72 confirmed kills is that often they were the ones that confirmed their kills, so they would inflate it. The Red Baron, who fought Billy Bishop and fought many Canadians and Royal Canadian Air Forcemen and French Air Forcemen, on the German side was the Red Baron, or Manfred von Richthofen, and he had 80 confirmed kills. Now he dies at the end of the war, whereas Billy Bishop survives and he goes on to a successful speaking tour and becomes a Canadian icon. An ace had 5 kills. Now 5 doesn't seem like many by today's standards, but in the unreliable machine air war in World War I, that's actually quite a bit. Now pilots had a 3-week life expectancy, so they got more food rations and kind of comfier living accommodations because the chances were you would probably die if you were a pilot, but there was lots of prestige in it as well. As a class, we then looked at the ocean, the water war that's going on in the Atlantic. This is where the convoy system develops. Boats are being sunk by the mean German Untersee boats in the wolf pack that are hunting the Atlantic. And the Germans have something called unrestricted submarine warfare. Now that's when they just shoot anything that's coming from another nation, so it could be United States, could be Mexico, could be who knows what, coming across to supply the troops that are against them, so the British and the French. So the convoy systems developed to bring members of the merchant marine, that means people who are selling goods to the war-torn countries, so people bringing pork or grain from Canada over, things to eat. they're getting sunk by ships, and they're part of the merchant marine. They're not part of the navy. So if they die or they get hurt, there's no pension. And there's this giant controversy right now over whether or not we should pay these people. I mean, they supplied the war effort. Without them, we wouldn't have known, we wouldn't have been able to survive and keep fighting. Canada has 2 battleships at this time period that are helping with this convoy system. One is called the Rainbow, which is probably the scariest battleship name we could come up with, and really shows our Canadian identity, and the Niobe. And I'm pretty surprised there isn't the SS Skittles thrown in there too. That would be just as scary. One of the final things we looked at was Canadian women and what they did during the war. Now, apart from working in factories back home and really helping run this war effort, they also formed something called the Bluebirds. And this was 2,500 Canadian nurses who were actually there on the front lines helping repair injured soldiers, helping minister to them in their time of need. And boy, you can't argue anymore that women don't deserve the vote, because they were actually there just about sacrificing their lives for this war effort. So because of their effort and the effort of many women at home, Canadians are going to get the vote. The last thing we talked about the other day was the famous Halifax disaster, Halifax explosion. In Halifax Harbor, which was one of the busiest harbors in the war because it was helping supply ships that were heading towards the front or across the Atlantic Ocean, there was a French ship full of munitions called the Mont Blanc. And the Mont Blanc was a ship that was full of explosives, and it was hit by the Norwegian ship, ironically named the Emo. The Emo hit the Mont Blanc, and within around an hour, it blew up and leveled Halifax City. And this was the first time that the war really struck home with Canada. Halifax looked like, for the first time, this war front and how awful it was, with people dying and people hurt, people injured. So 3,000 people injured, 3,000 people dead, 10,000 people injured. For the first time, people said, we need to win this war, because if the war looks anything like Halifax does, it's horrendous. And we've got to supply ships, we've got to work for the war to improve conditions for the boys at the front. And this is the picture of what we accomplished today in class.